Cool.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to Good Measure. My name is David and I'll be your host today. Today we have Allie Shuldman, software engineer at Microsoft. She's here today to talk with us about Microsoft and her journey to get there. Allie, thank you for being here with us today. Do you mind quickly introducing yourself to those in the audience who may not be familiar with you and your work?
Sure. Hi, I'm Allie. I am a software engineer working on Outlook iOS at Microsoft. I've been there since August 2020. Yeah.
And so nowadays it seems that everybody's basically gunning for a spot at these top tier tech companies. How did you sort of do it? And could you sort of elaborate a bit about your journey from high school to getting a sort of software engineer at Microsoft?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was really obsessed with Apple. I thought it was the coolest company, loved it. I would watch like all 2 hours of the WWDCs. So for a while, that was like my ultimate goal. I was like, I got to work at Apple.
Mhm.
So in college, I was applying to all the big companies because that's what I thought I should do. And so sophomore year, I was applying to every big company for an internship, and I either didn't hear back or got rejected from all of them. And I was like, okay, now what? And I had taken an entrepreneurship class
Mhm.
that year. So I was like, let's just go the startup route. That seems kind of fun. So I ended up working at a startup sophomore year in Ithaca. I went to Cornell, so it was a lot of Cornell people,
Mhm.
and it was so much fun. It was just because I was kind of the only like tech person on the team. So I got to do everything and anything I wanted and just
Mhm.
play around. It was a hardware startup. It was like this little like greenhouse in a box.
Mhm.
Um, and I was working on an iOS app for it. So it was really fun. And then junior year, started applying again to companies for internships. And I put in a lot of smaller companies and startups,
Mhm.
also the large ones, and just applied to just everything. Uh, I got into like a couple rounds with Microsoft, and I wasn't really feeling the big company vibe at first.
Mhm.
But I got an offer for Outlook iOS, and what really sold me on it was kind of like a small little startup within a huge company. So
Mhm.
it had that like build fast, try things out energy, and it wasn't a huge team. It's like a good sized team, but
Mhm.
it's like still nice and little homey. But you also have the benefits of being in a large company. You get to meet a lot of people. The campus is cool. Um, so that was kind of the high level journey to
Mhm.
Microsoft. And then after the internship, I got a return offer, and now
Mhm.
I'm back.
That sounds so cool. Was it like was it like just like a little section of Microsoft where it was like this is like a new product we're working on. It's like just like this new like startup sort of like brand new ideas for Microsoft part, right?
It was actually Microsoft bought two startups, Acompli and Sunrise,
Mm-hmm.
and one was a mail app, one was a calendar app. So they
Mm-hmm.
bought them, acquired all the people, and that's what became Outlook iOS.
Oh.
And so it had a lot of like startup people,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it was really new. It was just we're pushing together these two crazy apps that exist and are great at what they do, and we're making it our own. Um, so it was just like an interesting environment. You have these startup people, you have old Microsoft people, you
Mm-hmm.
mix it together, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes Outlook iOS.
And so speaking of about working on a team, when you work at Microsoft in these sort of teams and projects, how do you how do you plan out your time? Do you use software for that? Do you sort of try to write it down on a notebook by yourself? How do you sort of micromanage yourself to make sure that you get everything done in a timely manner?
Yeah, that's still something I'm working on now, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the features or projects you'll work on, you're either with a small team or you have someone that's kind of a leader, and you'll just be given like either the entire thing, like do this please, or you'll get individual tasks. And you just make sure you're doing it on time. A lot of it is just talking to people, making sure that you're on the right track, making sure
Mhm.
you're doing what you think you should be doing. And then when you're giving those like larger projects, the best thing is to just break it down into like the tiniest pieces.
Mhm.
It's good for like code reviews. It's good to have small pieces. It's good just in general for like reusability of your code if you're developing in small pieces, but it also just, it keeps you on track because you're like, okay, got that piece checked in. Let's get to the next one.
Mhm.
Um, and then also just being open and honest with everyone that's a part of what you're working on, saying like, I'm struggling on this.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm struggling with, like talk it out, or like this is going to take a while. I know it'll take a while for X, Y, and Z, and
Mhm.
just making that known.
Mm. So communication is really important, right? And so
Mhm.
when working on Outlook as a software engineer, are there multiple languages that you need to know, or is there just like one primary language that you use when coding an iOS system?
Yeah, so we're like mostly Swift. We still have like a little Objective-C left.
Hmm.
So Swift is like the main thing. I've recently been having to deal with some Objective-C things, so
Hmm.
I'm thankful I learned it way back when. I've forgotten most of it, but I still play around with that a little bit. And then our backend is written in something else, but it's very readable. So I kind of forget what it is, but whenever I need to look at it, which isn't often, I can understand it for the most part.
Hmm.
But yeah, mostly Swift.
Are there any benefits to working with an iOS system? As like someone who's been a fan of Apple for so long, was this really cool for you to use Swift and just work on an Apple product at like a major tech company?
Yeah, because I was always really into app development. I thought it was really fun. Everyone uses apps. A lot of people have iPhones, so
Hmm.
it's kind of everywhere. Like when we talk about like our daily active users, it's large numbers, which is
Hmm.
such a cool thing to think about. So yeah, I love it. I guess the biggest thing is to just do what you love.
Hmm.
Um, don't do what you think might be like the coolest thing. Like
Hmm.
just do whatever you love. Because if you don't love it, it's going to be painful to work on.
And so, with the internet being so big and so mainstream these days, there's so much new ways to learn new technology, new languages. Are you using the internet to learn something yourself? And if so, could you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah. Recently I've been working with some Apple APIs that I just was not familiar with whatsoever. Um, so it's still a lot of, Stack Overflow, Apple forums, videos on YouTube. There's someone on my team who actually makes really, really great videos that I watch sometimes. It's called iOS Academy. His name is Afraz. Great videos. So there's never a moment where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be looking this up. I should know it.
Hmm.
Most of the time, maybe I should know it, but sometimes it's just reading that one thing. It's like, oh yeah, it all comes back. So it's never an explicit like, I'm gonna go out
Hmm.
and learn this. It's a lot of times like I'm working on this.
Yeah.
Let's just do a huge learning session.
Hmm.
And then another thing with Microsoft, or at least the team I'm on, is we have hackathons like 3 times a year, maybe 4. And you can also use that time to just learn.
Hmm.
So the last one I learned Swift UI, so that was kind of fun. So you do have opportunities to just
Hmm.
learn what you want, but yeah.
And so, speaking about learning, while on the way, while learning, you must have encountered some times where you've struggled or when you haven't achieved something that you really sought out to achieve. How do you sort of tackle that? Do you go and look at it and say like, oh, I missed this part. I should go focus on that, and you section out the things that you, let's say, not necessarily failed at, but like didn't really achieve, or how do you really deal with these sort of setbacks?
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes it's easy to like get embarrassed when you like mess something up or you failed at something or didn't learn something. And it's kind of, you just have to like lean into that and be like, I didn't know what I was doing then. Let's learn it right now, or
Mhm.
talk to someone. Like whenever I was applying for like different clubs on campus and maybe I didn't get one,
Mhm.
the most helpful thing was talking to my interviewer after the fact and being like, what maybe like what didn't you like? What didn't you see from me that you would have wanted to see?
Mhm.
What could I do to be a stronger candidate next time? Because it's very easy to get embarrassed when you don't get something, or you just do something wrong. So
Mhm.
it's good to not be embarrassed, I guess.
Mhm. And for uh, oh, I think this is going to be a better way to phrase it. Because the internet's there's so much more resource out there. If you were to totally relearn coding, how would you approach it? And would there be like a language you try to learn first because it translates into a lot more languages, or is there a specific route that you take?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I think one thing that's really good to learn like early is just like the right way to do things in a sense. Like how to think about things. I think a lot of like tutorials are just like, this is how you do it, and rather this is instead of this is why you do this thing. Um, so picking up like good practices early on, I think is helpful. Um, but I think there's a lot of resources out there for app development. So I think that's a great way to get into things, especially because you can build something quick, put it on your phone, show people. It's kind of fun. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of great resources. So maybe that when I was first learning app development, it was Objective C, which was just ugly and
Mhm.
not the easiest to understand, especially
Yeah.
I didn't know what like memory management was. So
Mhm.
no clue why things were doing what they were doing.
Mhm.
Um, so now that it's Swift, I think it's very easy, it's very readable. Um, yeah, maybe Swift or Python.
Mhm.
Those are
So,
fun.
so what I'm hearing is just your recommendation wouldn't just be like a specific language, but actually learning the process to learn how to pick up new information, right?
Yeah, or just like what maybe like what is everything doing?
Hmm.
Like not just what does oh this like setting the variable to this that achieves that, but like what is actually happening maybe like under the hood? Like why
Hmm.
are you doing it this way? Yeah.
Okay. And so this is my last question. So for any upcoming student who wants to go this sort of software engineering route, are there any sort of opportunities along the way that you'd recommend them take? Like, is there a hackathon event, or is there some web event that happens annually that you encourage them to go and attend?
I was never really into all those like hackathon things. Those always very much intimidated me. Um, I always had that feeling like there's people out there that know so much more than me.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna sit back. Um, so for me, it was a lot of just playing around on my own.
Hmm.
Get one thing that was really helpful was just getting familiar with being frustrated.
Hmm.
I think a lot of coding is can be just being frustrated.
Yeah.
So doing that early. Yeah, just playing around with the technologies you're interested in. Um, Computer science is pretty much just problem solving, but on a computer. So
Hmm.
any sort of problem solving things, like it doesn't even have to be like a computer science class or a math class. It's just
Hmm.
learn how to problem solve and think about things from different angles.
Hmm.
So yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much.